Welcome to TriTech University. My name is Bill Steppen, and today we're going to wrap up our month-long deep dive into physical inventory, the processes and procedures within the AIM point-of-sale system. Hopefully this will be a little bit smoother of a session than last week's session without any technical glitches, knock on wood. As always, though, I'm going to invite you to sign in over on the right-hand side of the screen. There is the chat tab. If you click on that, you can then use the nickname button down below to log in and say hi and ask any questions that you have, because I think today is going to be more of an ask me anything regarding the physical inventory protocols. I do have a whiteboard app that I'm going to be using probably for the majority of our session today, as opposed to looking at kind of an example AIM point of sale system, because I think really what we're going to be looking at more is kind of the nuts and bolts of how it works in the background. So let's go ahead and switch over to that screen. Okay, so like I said, if you got any questions, let me know. But up to this point, we've been talking about kind of the how it works, I guess, or really just the nuts and bolts, the step-by-steps of what to do and when to do it and things like that. Today, what I want to do is talk about why we do it the way that we do it. So if you recall, when we start, we have step one, which is, well, that's all the way down there. Okay, let's get this here. Okay, so step one was to, prepare your count. And when we prepare your count, that goes in and that makes, boy, this is jumping all over the place. That makes a snapshot. And you can tell this is why I do a lot of typing as opposed to writing. So when it makes that snapshot, what it does is it keeps tabs on the inventory at that exact moment in time. So today is 12, what is today? 12/21. 2021 at 1:03 p.m. CST. So at that exact moment in time, that is when it knows what your inventory counts are. So RT14 equals 5 on hand. We'll use that as an example. So let's say now you go out and you make your counts, and those counts are at some point after that time, right? So when you make that counts, there will be some time beyond that. By the way, Anne, hello, welcome. If you want, you can access the previous inventory videos. They're currently in the recent live streams playlist back on the video tab. And after today, they will all be available in the inventory playlist. They'll be in both places, actually, so they will be labeled accordingly: physical inventory 1, 2, and 3. But thank you so much for the question. And I realize now that I'm kind of getting ahead of myself in what I'm talking about here. But basically, that's kind of is the steps. So step one is prepare the count. So when you do, you actually now go out and you make your counts, right? You make them either manually, just with pen and paper, going around and writing down the numbers, or you use a data collector. And with that data collector, it basically goes around and it just you zap them with the gun, and it records the barcode and it records the count that you put in at that time. So that's basically what it's doing. Is it's just skew and quantity counted, right? So when you put that in, it doesn't know exactly, when you took that count. So why do we do it the way that we do it? So when you get to ultimately step 3 of input counts, and step 4 is update the quantities, the non-serialized quantities. So when you do that, that's basically when it goes through, and what it does is it takes the difference between your count and what the computer thought you had. So let's do this. I realize that's now kind of scrolling down beyond the screen. So you've gone in and you've now updated those quantities. Well, what did that actually do? Because it didn't just overwrite this. It didn't just go up here. It didn't take this number here and suddenly change it from a 5 to a 6. It didn't do that. Let's do this. Let's kind of bring this up here so I kind of a new part of my little scrap sheet here, if you will. So when you started your count, let's go back to saying that RT14, the computer thought you had 5 on hand. Now, you go around and you make your counts and you discover that you actually have 6. The difference between 5 and 6 is a +1. So when you go in and you actually do this update, it does a +1 to the original count back up here, which is now, of course, I overwrote that and said it was a 6. Let's just change that back. So we originally said it had 5. So that's what it's going to update. But it's going to update that based on just this +1 here. I'm having my own technical difficulties because I didn't really test out this whiteboard app before. But it does that update based on just the +1, or whatever the difference is between the original computer snapshot quantity and your count quantity. What I'm getting at with all this is when you do this whole process, you want to try and limit the discrepancies that could arise from just normal day-to-day activity. So let's say that you really did start with 6. The computer thought you had 5. You counted 6, which is good. That's what you want to have happen. But let's say that unbeknownst to your counter or the person who started the process, someone in receiving received another batch of those. So during that receiving process, they brought in another 12, let's say another case. So they got another 12 in stock, which technically would be 18, right? 6 plus 12 is 18. Well, if you count 6, that's great, because technically that's what the count was when you started. But if you counted 18, it doesn't know that you counted that in addition to what you received. Basically, it just assumes, oh, you found, in essence, when it thought you had 5, it thought you found basically 13 more, right? Because the computer thought you had 5. You actually had 6 when you started the count, but now you received another 12, so you count those as well. You don't want to do that, because instead of it being a +1, now it's going to assume that when you count 18, it's going to assume that the difference between 5 and 18 is 13. When you get around to finally doing that update, it's going to use this number instead of this number, right? And that's going to really throw off that count. It's now going to say, oh, you didn't have 6, you had 18. But then you receive that 18 again, right? And basically, yeah, it's just not, you don't want to do it that way. We definitely encourage you, and this is on our flow chart, encourage you to essentially keep your inventory as static as possible when doing a count of your inventory. And that means no sales, that means no receives, that means no adjusting of the actual numbers. Now, obviously, it's quite unlikely that you or anyone out there is able to afford just shutting down business and counting your inventory. That is why what we do, and I will switch back over to my my point of sale system here. That is why when you go and do your physical inventory, when you prepare for physical, where is that screen? There it is. Okay. So let's say we're starting a new physical from the last time. When you go and start a new one, this is why we have all these options here, is you can really pick and choose the parts of your inventory that you want to count. So if it's going to be impossible to count all of your inventory before changes happen, before sales happen, or before receives happen, or anything like that, try and select the most inactive or the smallest part of your inventory possible. So if the smallest amount of inventory that you think you have on hand at any given time is, let's say, bicycles, if you're a bicycle shop. This time of year, probably you have more, maybe like fitness equipment in stock. Whatever the case may be, if it's the least active and if it is something that is easy to count in a relatively quick period of time, try and do that. Because what you can do, let's say you're going to go out and count just your hybrid bikes. We'll proceed with that, and then it will take a snapshot of that inventory. You go out, you count those as of exactly the time that AIM started this count of it. Then when you get done with that and you input those, you can always go back to that physical inventory prepare screen, and you can, well, of course, I don't have anything in that, so let's find something that I do have inventory in. I definitely have guitars, so let's just proceed with that. And what will happen is, as soon as that gets done here, what will happen is when that gets done, and of course we go out and make our counts, and we come back to this screen, you'll have the option, there we go, so the prepare is done. Now you go out and you make your counts, and then you're going to start another count. You want to count some more inventory. You go back to prepare, and you're given a choice because it says there's already one in progress, and it lets you know when that started as of 12/21 today. We want to say we want to add more records to the current cycle count. So we do that. We click OK. Now we can go and we can count band, or we can count furniture, or we can count, obviously these are my categories. You can count whatever categories you want to do. And you're not limited to just specific categories and subcategories. If you need to break it down even further, you can always go in and you can make selections based on manufacturer or a combination of manufacturer and category. And obviously you want to probably be doing this by specific locations as well. Especially if you have more than one, you probably are counting inventory individually at these given locations. So it's a good practice to make selections and prepare as of those specific locations. So just kind of keep that in mind as well. And something that I kind of didn't really bring up in past records or past recordings, and I don't have any here in my example, but we also have the ability to track locators now, kind of additionally, or more so than we did in version 11. We've got a whole locator table now. When we talk about locators, locators are where you will find this in the store. So if you want to make a selection on specific shelves and aisles and stuff like that, you can definitely do that. The setup for those is down here in the maintenance menu right next to my head, the add change locators option. You can come in and you can specify the descriptors as well as what type of locator this is. Of course, we're talking about inventory today. And you can assign those locator codes back to inventory records in your add change area. So if we go into change inventory and take a look at, let's good old RT14, you can, for any given record location, add a locator to that record, so that this is another way to not only find where that inventory hangs out if you've got like a back office or backspace area, but just where you can expect to find it to make a count on it. So yeah, that's something I figured I'd mention there as well. So that's kind of the idea and the mindset that I wanted to talk about with physical inventory when we talk about these protocols. I already mentioned in prior videos that when it makes that preparation, it counts effectively your active inventory that you can expect to find under your roof. So when we talk about inventory and quantities specifically, let's go into change inventory and pull up RT14 again, because it's my go-to guinea pig. We can come here to the locations tab and click this details button. And what I want to point out is that it doesn't count the quantity on hand, or it doesn't expect you to count the quantity on hand. What it expects you to count is the quantity available. The quantity available is basically the quantity on hand less any quantity out. Now, technically, what this system would do is it would actually expect you to count 68, and that's because you actually have one on record for order. So, in other words, if I click into here and press F6, there's one that is actually hanging out for a special order for a customer. But as far as the quantity out, these are items that, for all intents and purposes, are not available to count. So these could be things out on a rent or sales contract. They could be out on short-term rental. They could be withheld for a service in your service department. They could be in process in a transfer from one store to another. Probably the most confusing one of all of these is the whole concept of layaway. You can see in this case the difference here is I've got one of these on layaway, and it does not expect you to count that. It assumes when we're putting something on layaway, or when you are putting something on layaway, you are taking it out of your active stock area and putting it someplace kind of for safekeeping. So it assumes that anything in that safekeeping area is just kind of off limits, and it expects that to be there. So when you prepare, it only expects you to count things that you'll find out on the floor, things that you would find in backstock. In essence, anything that is available to sell. Now again, don't take that literally, because the quantity available in this case to sell is 67, but that is not considering the quantity withheld for the special order. So it will expect you to count that special order quantity. So just keep that in mind as well. Hopefully that's not too confusing. Let me know if there are any questions. But that's basically what I wanted to talk about today. So why don't we do this? We'll see if there are any questions that come in throughout this time here. And let's talk a little bit about, well, actually, okay. Devin's got a question. Devin says, does it expect me to count items that are allocated for web orders? Actually, Devin, that is a great question. So let me do this. Let's switch back to my screen here. And if we take a look here in the quantity out and press F6 on that, what it actually would do, you can see there is a spot here for web orders. Now, I will be honest, I haven't actually tested this, but I do believe that because this is considered a quantity out, it would not expect you to count that. So that being said, I haven't actually tested it, so I could be wrong on that, but I can definitely check that out, and if that is different, then I will, for the recording of this, I will come in and I will maybe put like a note up on screen just correcting myself as like an editor's note. But I will go ahead and make a test of that. It would take some time for me to set up a test of that, with having to go out and find an account that has a web account or a web store set up with it, a copy of a demo system, and play around with that. My assumption is because it is here in the quantity out area, that it would not be expecting you to count that. But I could be wrong, because I haven't tested it. So I will update that if I need to. Anne is asking, can I add an image possibly with a webcam while doing inventory? That is an intriguing question you've got there, Anne. Maybe if you could elaborate on that. I'm not quite sure where you're going with that question. So yeah, maybe if you could elaborate on what your purpose is with an image, and let me know. In the meantime, Kara is saying that the review physical import file is super helpful for unknown SKUs, which I thought I had mentioned last week, but yeah, definitely. So Kara brings up a point here in AIM. When you use, let's say, for example, the data collectors to go around and count inventory, basically your folks that are using that are just going to scan barcodes and key in items and put in counts regardless of whether it was prepared for or not. So when you import that count, it's quite possible that for however it happened, inventory got out on the floor without it ever being properly put into inventory and received. So when you scan something, if it comes back and basically says we don't know what this SKU is, then Kara is mentioning that the physical inventory report of, or actually the reviewing of the physical import file is super helpful for finding that, because what will happen is those will show up here on this report, this physical inventory counted but not in inventory. When you run this report, it will come back and say, okay, here's what you counted. You also counted these things. We don't know what they are. There's no description. There's no SKU. All we have is basically what you scanned and how many of them you counted. So by reviewing the import file, which you can do, if I remember correctly, by going to the physical inventory menu here and going to review physical import file, you can use this to look up that item number and basically see what you counted just before it and what you counted just after it. So that gives you an idea of where to go out on your floor, or basically in your stock area, and say, oh, I counted these next to these widgets, so that's probably somewhere out there. You can go out and find it and then properly get it into inventory. So yeah, great point there, Kara. Thank you so much. Anne is, I think, elaborating. She says, I want to add Active E, but I don't currently have images of my inventory. I see what you're saying. So yeah, we don't have anything like that at this time as far as going in and updating inventory directly while doing your physical inventory counts. But it wouldn't hurt to make a program request. You can go into the help menu and go to manage AIM support cases. And by doing that, you can then go in and add, using the add button, you can add a feature request, and basically that goes as a case right into our system here. Or you can always just give our support team a call, and we'll be more than happy to take those notes and at least pass them along. So yeah, great point there, Anne. Obviously, at this point, you're going through and physically handling every single product. So by all means, if you're able to snap a picture of it or whatever the case may be to update that, then that would be a good time to do so. Kara is saying sometimes SKUs change and are not retained, or it does not scan properly. So yeah, definitely if new items get in and for whatever reason they got a new barcode from the manufacturer, then that can be definitely a case where you scan something and that barcode was not originally in the system. So you could use that and do some research and say, oh, actually, yeah, this product is already here underneath a different SKU or a prior barcode or whatever the case might be. So with that. So yeah, awesome. This is a nice little discussion that I think we've got going on and helping everyone out. That's great. That is what I like to see during these broadcasts. Okay, if any more questions come in, I will keep an eye on that right here in front of me. I do want to talk a little bit about the upcoming January schedule. I think what I'd like to do, I think I'm going to maybe scale back the live stream broadcast during the month of January, give everyone kind of a chance to recover from the craziness that the year has been, especially for me for various reasons. But I do want to do maybe a special 1 hour live stream, some point nearing the kind of maybe the middle or the beginning third of the month. I want to do kind of what I was talking about before, kind of an Ask Me Anything. So if you've ever seen those types of sessions on the internet, like on Reddit and other various internet channels, where someone comes on and basically for whatever time frame, you've got their attention and you can literally ask them anything. I think that's what I'd like to do. I think I'd like to do something like that. Let me know either here in the chat area or up in the poll afterwards if that's something that you would like to see. In the meantime, there have been some suggestions that have come in for the poll. So I might do one, maybe one other one. Maybe I will do a full schedule in January. We'll just kind of see what my schedule outside of the live streams is for that time frame. But yeah, if that's something that you think would be interesting, let me know. And we can definitely explore that maybe a couple times a year if it's a popular enough thing, as my webcam goes in and out of focus with the craziness that it is. Anne is asking a follow-up question. Will any item that is sold out automatically reduce to 0 or be deleted? Excellent question, Anne. So what would actually happen? Let me do this. Let's transition back to my screen and let's bring my whiteboard back down here. So what would happen with inventory? So let's say that you've got an item. Let's just call it ABC 1, 2, 3. In real life, you have, let's just do this, reality. You have none on hand because you've sold out of them. There's no more on the floor. The computer thinks that you have, let's say, 2 or 3 or just basically some other number than 0. You go out, you count all your inventory, and you cannot find it. So any inventory that AIM has a count of, this thing is getting all kinds of weird. Any inventory that AIM has a count of, in this case it thinks you have one of these two numbers, whatever it might be, it doesn't matter. You don't actually count it, and therefore no scan of that gets into the system. When you update, it will automatically reduce that down to 0. And I shouldn't say reduce it down, it will literally change it to 0, because maybe the computer thinks you have a quantity in the negative. Maybe it thinks that you oversold on that item. Either way, if you don't count it, when you update non-serialized quantities, it will zero out any SKUs that it has a count of that you did not count or record a counting of. But it does not delete that SKU. It retains the SKU and all of its history, all of its information. It just literally zeroes out the quantity at that given location. So yeah, hopefully that makes sense. And where'd my mouse go? Oh boy, there it is. Okay. Hard to see a white mouse on a white background sometimes. So yeah, it does not remove that SKU. It just literally zeroes out the quantity. And there will be a record of that in the SKU's history as far as that adjustment. It would go in and it would do what's called basically a transfer out, either as a positive number to reduce the number, the quantity on hand, or potentially a negative transfer out to bring it back up to that zero. So you'll still have that adjustment in the inventory history. So yeah, hopefully this is helpful. And I think at this point, well, we are at the end of our session time, but if there are any other questions, I'm more than willing to run a few minutes longer. But I think at this point, we've kind of hammered in as much as we can regarding physical inventory procedures. So thank you so much for all of your attention throughout this month and all the past months that we've been doing these live streams. I think this is the longest stretch of live stream classes and webinars that we've done in a good long while. A lot of great information out there. You can check all of those out on the video tab when you first log into the video area. Check out those playlists. You can either see the live stream, the specific live streams that we've done on this platform on the recent live streams tab, or the recent live streams playlist, I should say. And then there are all kinds of other pre-recorded webinars and other videos on the other playlists as well. And sometimes a video may be on more than one playlist if it fits in multiple areas. Like I said to Anne earlier, these recordings will not only be in the recent live streams playlist, but they will also find their way to the inventory playlist as well. And there is an older video there on physical inventory as well that I did a couple years ago. I will be removing that one and replacing it with these 3 videos just to kind of make sure that there's not a bunch of duplicate content. So yeah, that's kind of how I've been working the new video site. Anyway, I hope you all, if you celebrate, I hope you all have a very Merry Christmas. I will be seeing you sometime in January. Again, let me know your thoughts on doing like an Ask Me Anything type session, maybe an extended one for 40 minutes, a full hour, whatever that might be, so that people can kind of come and go as they have time. And continue to make other suggestions in the poll area. And I hope you all have a great rest of the year, and we'll see you in 2022. Take care.